So today's agenda is going to be an introduction of our panelists, as I mentioned, and then we will be talking more about specific questions about legal career, and then we'll have some key takeaways as well as questions and answers, and some information about upcoming webinars. So just on the introduction, just to introduce myself, I'm a qualified lawyer who practiced in Hong Kong and qualified in England and Wales as well. And so are my co-speakers, Kris and Henry, both qualified in both jurisdictions as well. So subsequent to practicing law for a number of years, I went into legal recruitment and co-founded my current company called Star Anise. I'm a mentor of the Young Solicitors group of the Law Society and other forums, and I'm also a very keen advocate for pro bono and CSR matters. So that's me. For Kris on my left or on the right, whichever way you're looking at us, she's worked in both law firms and in the in-house banking industry across the APAC region over 25 years of professional career. She's also a member of the Standard Chartered's Group Legal Diversity and Inclusion Committee. And Henry is a founding partner of LMY Law Office. He's also, would you like to?
No, just like, maybe I just give a maybe very brief introduction of the background, or that may be easier. Just I know, So like for the first 10 years, I know Annie when I started my first job, so she knew me pretty well for a very long time, for nearly 20 years now. So like I started with more a litigator. So, and then I switched to like IPO M&A practice and work in Northern Roads and Industrials like for almost 10 years. And then before I became an in-house, and then I started actually as a deputy general counsel, looking after the entire legal department and build it up actually from scratch for another 5 years in a bank, in an investment bank. So look after even wider practice, including of course ECM, DCM, funds formations, downstream investment, sales and trading compliance, and also of course some litigation regulatory matters as well. And then after another 5 years, I got a little bit bored. So I started my own law firm. I was thinking about what should I do next, right? After trying both in-house and both practice. So I started my own law firm back in the end of 2015. So it's reaching the 5 years mark by the end of this year. So like it's more focused, is two areas. One is on the fintech. The other one is on the Greater Bay Area for practice. It's now a full practice for including all the IPO, non-contentious, contentious, and with a particular focus on the blockchain industry.
That's amazing, Henry. Thank you so much. I think Henry has touched upon every piece of law you can think of, every practice area. So he's very well qualified, as well as Kris, to speak today on specific questions about legal career. So if we go on to the next slide, please. So today's panel discussion, we're going to go through a few kind of career moves and also tips on what you experienced during your different moves. So the first question I have is, what steps did you take before moving from private practice to in-house? Because both of you have done that, maybe many years ago, and it would be really
more than 10 years ago.
More than 10 years ago for you, and more than 20 years? 18 years ago. So, it's a long time, so very well experienced. So what steps did you take before you moved from private practice to in-house? Maybe we'll start with you, Kris.
Okay. So first of all, I'd like to thank you, Annie, for organizing this platform for all of us to share our experiences and ideas to get across. And thank you very much to Star Anise as well for hosting this today. I'd just like to say that in my career, which has been over 20 years, and I won't say how many, you don't really plan as much to go in-house. I think very early on in your career, before you even get to in-house, I think everyone has to focus on getting the right experience. So you've just finished law school, you've just gotten your training completed, and it's very, very important in the first few years of your career to buckle down and get the actual experience in drafting, legal skills, and to hone down your research ability as well. So not to focus, if you're just, for example, at university or you're at law school still, don't worry about the paths you're going to take, because that will come later on. Those opportunities will come to you later on. But it's very, very important as soon as you finish law school to get and finesse your legal skills very early on. because that will actually launch you into your next stage as you progress and as you become more and more senior. So if in the early years, don't even think about moving just yet from private practice to in-house. Focus on a couple of years of drafting, research, skills, which are very, very important.
That's very wise advice. So basically solidify your technical drafting skills.
And build your solid foundation before you actually even think about what you want to do next. Because nobody has a definitive plan when they're in law school. Yes, we all have our goals, but we never know where it's going to take us and which organization or which corporate we're going to go into.
So true. And Henry, do you have a different perspective or an additional points?
I would say I totally agree, right? I think thanks again for Henry for giving us an opportunity to share this with you, because I think there's a real timely for this webinar, because I see a lot of, because particularly for the last 5 years, we have interviewed a lot of the candidates and all that. And we feel that that's a trend. A lot of these candidates that we've interviewed, or the trainees or the younger generations, they have a tendency of like joining in-house earlier and earlier, because in our generations, we normally think of like joining in-house at least after 6 or 7 years of PQE. And then you say at the stage, and then where you think about whether I should go for the partnership route or I should join the in-house route. That's normally the stage when we start thinking about that. But now you can see, I have a couple of members, particularly they just after 2 years PQE, they say, oh, I'll go in-house, right? Particularly to some banks or insurance companies and all that, and some of the crypto firms as well. I think, and normally the thing is, yes, normally the answer is, oh, they provide a little bit more work-life balance and all that. So that's true. But at the same time, you have to have a long-term game plan. You have to, I would say, the one I would supplement is, I totally agree with what Kris said, but you do not have to think too much about it, but you have to have a long-term game plan. So you have to keep checking and say, oh, my long-term game plan is to become, let's say, a partner or that, and to see whether you are working in that sort of directions, right? And some of the basic skill set is very important, I think. And let's say research, and let's say drafting. I would say in an in-house environment, I mean, normally you would not have so much time and attention, right? I'm sure, right? Exactly. Because general counsel would not spend so much time in criticizing or amending your drafting. That I think that's the real situations, right? If you should if you really want to improve your research skills or legal skills and all that, actually the law firm environment is a better environment to do this. Okay, of course, there are a lot of hard work, and just because that's the hard work that you have put in the blood and sweat, that give you and make you a better lawyer. And just simply don't, oh, the work-life balance, don't just simply look at the dollar sign and all that, right? Just think about how to be a better lawyer, and all the monies and all the things will come.
Later. And actually, from an employer's point of view, the most CVs that I've seen, if you're a 1 PQE, a lot of people 1 PQE or newly qualified, who've gone in-house, actually come back to private practice for a few more years to solidify their technical skills. Exactly. Thank you so much for sharing that. So Kris and Henry, you've both switched practice areas in your career. What advice would you give to participants about how they can go about switching? Because it's not easy to switch to be from a litigator to become a corporate finance lawyer or a banking lawyer. You know, what opportunities, how can they go about it? Do you think it's true? Kris, would you like to?
So going back to what I said earlier about honing your skills and making sure you've got experience in a broad breadth of different areas of the law. And that's why when we do our training, it's so important you do a little bit of litigation, you do some commercial, you do some corporate, and that gives you the broad breadth of training that you really do need as a junior lawyer.
Yes.
So once to actually make that switch is to find out for yourself and make that determination what you're particularly interested in. Because if you're not interested in a particular area, your long-term life goals are not going to be achievable. So very early on, use that opportunity to find out what is your key strengths. Is it actually going to court? Is it litigation? Is it corporate? Is it, dealing with commercial, or is it conveyancing? That is the opportune time to find out what your key strengths are. And from then on to leverage and develop and research and read and actually find out what you want to do later on in life.
Right.
So for me, myself, and a lot of people that I have come across in my career, is that you start off in a particular area as a qualified solicitor or as a qualified lawyer, and use that time to network, um, to do good pieces of work, and the work will speak for itself. So when I was in a law firm, I managed to do substantial amount of work for various clients. And when it came time over the years for that particular client and an opportunity arose, a vacancy arose, I was able to leverage off the work that I had done in private practice to sell myself. So I was able to say that I had done a certain piece of work for that client. And because they were looking for an in-house position, I was able to leverage and secure that position. So it is, and nobody can tell you in advance when that door will open. So it really is a matter of putting your head down and just getting on with the work that you're able to do in that environment, in that private practice, and enjoying what you do. And honestly, the clients will come to you, or people like Star Anise will come to you knocking on your door, and stay in touch with people like Annie, you know, and they will know when clients are looking for in-house opportunities that you guys can leverage off.
Thank you so much. And I would say that it doesn't happen immediately.
No.
It might happen 5 years, 10 years.
Yeah.
You know, if you keep in touch with people, then opportunities will arise. That's so true. Thank you, Kris. How about you, Henry? Do you have any additional points on that?
Yeah, for switching practices.
You're an expert on that.
I'm a bit expert on that, but just because Annie would have seen that I switched from being a litigator, full-time litigator, to a full-time corporate practice, from full-time corporate practice, full-time in-house, and full-time in-house to now sort of fintech and all that, right? But one thing is, I want to say, when you switch a practice, that's something you have to bear in mind. One is that you have to be really prepared to put in the extra buttons where the practices were not ready. And then you have to put in the extra effort on that in order to catch up, and all that, because no one will wait for you. No one will, yes, they give the opportunity to learn in a new area. It doesn't mean that they will wait for you, right? You have to catch up, you have to put in extra work. When if you compare some of the peers maybe doing like 3 or 5 years in the same practice, and you start off in a new area, right? But maybe of the same age, then you got to catch up. But I think the reward is that, let's say, for example, if you want to switch from litigation to corporate, right? Of course, then your peers may be doing the same thing for 5 years, it's more like a trainee, then you have to catch up on that, and that's no shortcut. I mean, the only thing that you could do is to put in extra effort than your peers. But one day is that you can catch up with them, and at the same time, your extra skill set, which your peers don't have, because you know litigations and corporate. I mean, that will be an advantage, but that will only show after a few years' time. So that's the first thing. The second thing is that if you really the second thing is that I'll always encourage, right? Some of the trainees that candidates that we have interviewed, they always keep telling me, that, oh, I'm very determined, even as a trainee, right? I wanted a corporate lawyer, or I wanted a litigation lawyer, right?
To be a partner.
That's fine. But the one thing I always remind them, if you ever come for an interview, like I said, I always give them advice is, even if you want to be a corporate partner, or you're so determined to be a corporate lawyer in long term, at least spend 2 years in litigation. Or if you're long term, if you want to be a litigation, let's say lawyer partner in 10 years time, spend at least 2 years of a career as a corporate lawyer. The reason why is that is, for example, I'll keep always, because when I look at some of the drafting within, let's say, the corporate lawyers, right? They just rethink from a commercial mindset. But at the end of the day, I keep asking, right? Why do you have to do all this drafting? The only reason, if you trust all your counterparties and all that, you don't need the drafting, you don't need the paper, right? The major reason for you to have something called the contract or the agreement is that in case there's a dispute, then how the court or the arbitral tribunal will resolve that in their eyes. So that if you spend at least a couple of years as a litigator, then you will have, when you come to drafting, the one thing I really truly benefit is that in my career is that I know if I draft this way, if that's being dispelled, if it's put in front of a judge on court, how would they look at that? How would they interpret it? That's the thing. That's the sense that you have to grasp. I mean, just by the research and the drafting as a litigator. Then and because I did, like, you remember the days that I had actually took the cases like to the CFA, actually like one of the cases gone to CFA, CA, and all that, a lot of cases to the High Court. So after having that sort of experience, you know that some of the drafting, which may be, you will be tighten up your drafting, and then you will make you a better corporate lawyer. But and at the same time, is that like as a corporate lawyer, as a litigator, right, I still remember the days when I was Annie and all that. But I still can complain, right? Why do these like commercial parties and all these clients and all that, right? How can they have a better drafting in the commercial contract, clearer drafting, so that they don't have this sort of dispute, right? Even though they give us the money, right? Which is a good thing. But like, why can't they do that? And then, and I still remember at the time in my and Northern Rose, right? I was doing both. And then the one thing is that I want, at that time, that was 2005, 6-ish. And then they start to have the SFC investigations, right? And then that's the focus that I wanted to be in at that time, because the SFO just came out. And I was like, oh, I still remember the managing partner of the Northern Rose, David Steiner, if most of some of you may know him, is that he said, if you haven't done an IPO or an M&A or with like involving listing company and takes over court, right? How can you be doing the good litigator to argue? How can you envision and visualize the entire thing? How the litigation, the negotiation process, how the deal could be done and was done at that time, right? And then therefore, he actually enticed me to join the corporate practice. Nice. So I think that's really better, because after joining, doing the IPOs and M&A so many times, now I start to understand why they could not come with a clearer drafting. The reason why is that, why would they have insider trading? Why would they have this and that, right? How they do the settlement, let's say, for example, and how do they do investment on the investment process? So you need to have so as I said, like, you need to have like, keep an eye on both sides of the practices.
Well, that definitely makes sense. But what advice would you give to these people to, because the partners may not be so acceptable to switching practice areas?
Do you know why? I keep asking this question. Okay, I think like after going through all this, and being a partner myself now, and one major area is that, because just to be honest with you, because I don't talk about just being honest with you guys, one about is the cost. If, let's say, for example, if you are 3 years PQ, let's just say, for example, as a litigator, right? You know how much like the international law firms pay for. Can they afford to, at that certain rate, start doing you haven't done due diligence before, I put it back to your corporate due diligence, right? But in their mindset, they can ask a trainee at a fraction of the cost and do a better job than you do, right? So how would you persuade your partner to give you the opportunity to do that, right? So one of the things is that if you are really determined to switch or practices and all that, one thing you have to bear in mind and you have to prepare to accept is to lower your salary package, right? I think the same, right? If one thing comes to you, right? If you're like 5 years PKs, right, and you're doing something like a research, right, which or litigations, right? You know nothing. You don't even know how to issue a writ, right? So one thing I think Annie, you have to one thing that have to prepare if they do decide to switch from one practice to another to broaden the court. You have to say, you treat yourself more like an NQ again, more like even training again. So then you will have lots of opportunities. I think the partner will then be more welcome than not that, start trying some new things, right?
I see. Okay, interesting. Thank you so much for that. I think that's very insightful. So how about, I know you've spoken a bit about fintech, and you're very big on fintech, crypto. Are there any courses that you would recommend to the participants to undertake, or how are they going to learn about fintech when it's so new, relatively new?
That's a very interesting idea. I think one of the things is about reading. Of course, like you can, I think it's all about knowledge, right? So it's about, no matter whether it's a corporate fund formations or IP, and I think it's the same, or even virtual bank, right? That's all the same, right? It's just keep reading. Whether you read from maybe magazine, you read online websites, or read my books. I've written a couple of books, right? You can search it. One is called GLI, right? You can just type like GLI, like blockchain practice and all that. You will find I wrote the Hong Kong chapter. No, just keep reading, right? I think the interesting part about cryptos and blockchain and all that, because I started looking into this and back in 2013, one of my friends just like, there's something called Bitcoin, right? Buy into it and all that, right? You'll be rich by that. But I think, well, that's so scary, right? It's not backed by anything. It's just a piece of code, and you sell me. At that time, that was I still remember, it's $120 USD. I think $1,000 Hong Kong dollars to buy a coding. I mean, now how much is 16,000 US dollars, right?
Wow.
Yeah.
Did you buy some?
I'll tell you later. But no, but and then as that, as a lawyer, I think that's really interesting because, just because it's a new creature, I would say, basically, to say the law at that time and the different jurisdictions have difficulties in categorizing. Is it a currency? Is it a financial instrument, or is it a commodity, or is it something new, or that? I think it's now settled like after nearly now 10 years, right, since creation. Now in Hong Kong, it's called a virtual commodity. But I think that, and now there's a new category. If you look at the new FSTB, they have recently launched a consultation paper in early November. That's very timely. They have now launching what they call their virtual asset service provider license in order to govern the virtual assets. So that is, I think that's very positive for the lawyers, right? They love law regulations and they're creating more laws and regulations in this area. What I want to say is that because I actually went through the entire journey. So I actually talked to the regulators and the academics and the peers as well, and some of the, of course, the exchanges as well. So we actually work together to of course to try to come up with the regulation and the appropriate. Even we will make a submission to the consultation paper. We talk SFTB, Hong Kong MA, SFT from time to time on a regular basis, right? I'm sure Kris has done the same for virtual bank as well. We actually, I think that's so interesting that we are shaping the law.
Yeah,
we're not just following the law. We're not doing research. 20 years ago, I was doing research. Now I'm trying to shape the law that's appropriate for the community. I think. But I'm grateful, because of my groundwork and all the hard work in the past. Then we can do this, right?
Thank you, Henry. And I'd like to learn a bit more from Kris as well about virtual banking, because I think in Hong Kong there's only 8 virtual banks right now with licenses, and you're involved in the digital banking. So how did you get involved in that? Was it part of your job, or did you seek it out internally?
Okay, so how I got into it personally is, again, like Henry said, you do a lot of research, you do a lot of reading, and when it comes up to actually find out what is out there, that goes a long way. So, for example, if we're in-house and we're thinking about launching anything new, whether it's any new product, it can be digital banking, it can be what is our fingerprint scanning, where are we with the law, where are we with law with electronic signatures. When we're in-house, we've got to do the research, and it very often is, and I'll come to this later in another question, is that we will need to find out very quickly what the status is of such new products, such new features when we offer banking. So again, back to e-signatures, back to fingerprint scanning, we would need to find out what the status is at any given point in time very quickly. So either I have a couple of choices. Either I could rely on my own reading skills, what I know to date. I can then go and call up somebody in private practice, and I can give Henry a call and say very quickly, I've got 15 minutes, tell me all you need to know about this particular product. And he will have to leverage on the reading skills and what he knows at that given point in time. So very often in-house, we're looking at a very top level at any given point in time what the status is. So it's very important for everyone to be up to date with what that particular area of law is. And not only that, if Henry didn't know about, for example, the status of fingerprint scanning in Zambia, for example, he would be able to know and develop to where would he go for his research? Who are the regulators in that jurisdiction? What is the current status of play in that jurisdiction, whether it's in the UK or whether it's in Switzerland, whether it's in Australia? Where would he go and find out what the latest status is, or who are the regulators are, what their current thinking is? And that would be very important to me in-house. So if I have a trusted advisor, Henry, in a private practice, I could leverage off that 15-minute conversation before we actually...
Do you know anyone in Zambia?
Because we don't, we don't really engage a law firm. We really do develop a relationship
Yes.
with people. And we know, for example, and that goes with any industry. So whether it is a corporate, I would call up a corporate because I trust them and they're up to speed with their advice. So with regards your first question on digital banking, it is just one of the given products that the bank does. And we would develop and build that product depending on the expertise at any given point in time. And we would choose a jurisdiction and a law firm to go with, given their expertise. Because, and again, I'll come to this later on, we don't have very much, we don't have the luxury in-house to develop that skill set ourselves.
Right. Okay. Thank you very much for that sharing. So the next question is talking about how you overcame obstacles when you moved from one industry to another. So from private practice to in-house, then in-house to private practice. What did you do in terms of that? Maybe we'll start with you, Kris.
The biggest obstacle is speed. We don't have the luxury of time when we're in-house because there are, again, a multiple different things that we're dealing with. So we're not only dealing with the business folk, we're dealing with other departments in-house that you will have to be faced with. So in-house, you'll have a finance department, you'll have an operational department that you've got to deal with, you'll deal with compliance. So very often when people, the whole point of going in-house is people want speed, they want it very quickly, and they want it correct. And so that was the biggest obstacle that I found.
And usually very cheaply as well, to save costs, right?
That's why you're in-house, yes.
Right. And I guess you would have found a mentor to either internally or outside to enable you or to help you with your transitions.
That's right. So like we've discussed before separately, you never have one mentor, you have multiple mentors in-house. So, and those people will come to you and you will seek those mentors for different needs, whether it is just to sound somebody out, a colleague, whether it is somebody like your boss, or whether it's somebody in another department, it can be in another jurisdiction, but somebody who can give you the guidance and support that you need to develop a full-rounded career in your life. Yeah.
That's great. Thank you. And Henry, did you find some mentors along the way?
Yeah, definitely. So I have some mentors like throughout my lifetime. One of the mentors actually was the time when I met when I was a summer intern, like more than 20 years ago, and so we still have to. We don't have to meet a mentor like every week, right, or every day. So just catch up maybe once or twice a year. That's more than enough, right? So every time I still remember like when I have to make a big decision, let's say jump from let's say private practice to in-house, or which in-house, or jump back from in-house to start my law firm. I did consult my mentor. I mean, and say, oh, what's the pros and cons, and what have you. Yeah. So that's exactly the reasons, because I think to have the webinar today is that I wish, let's say like 20 years ago, I could have a really good advice and all that, so that I could foresee what will happen in 5-10 years time. So I could have made a better decisions, right? So that's exactly the reasons why I say, the COVID time mentor, and is that and I think it's a good time when you are and let's mention to me, some of the candidates got stuck in their career path. They don't know which direction they should go to, or what's the right thing to do at this point in time, which is not easy. I know, like for a lot of the candidates out there, and that's exactly the reasons why we came up with the idea of like hosting a webinar today. Or maybe the time is very short, so hopefully I can give all the true and advice and view, or my personal view, like for you to digest and to consider. Or if you have anything you want to talk about, like feel free to speak to any of us afterwards. I think that's really important.
Thank you so much. So we've got another question. How did you set up your own law firm, Henry? Because obviously you were doing very well in-house. Yeah, you could have carried on in-house.
That's a little bit tricky thing, and just because at the time when I was the deputy general counsel for my investment bank, even after 5 years, I was just only like 35, 36, and I started thinking, right, it's like, do I want to stay in the in-house, like doing the same thing and all that? Because when I first joined the in-house, I was the only qualified lawyer in the department. and then I set up all the policies, set up the whole thing. Like after 5 years, and then like day to day, it's like, oh, I'm doing okay. It's IPO, but IPO after IPO, and then after and investment, they all sort of becoming very similar, and I got a little bit bored. And it's like, do I want to do the same thing maybe for the next 5, 10, 15 years, right? Because it's still, I don't want to get retired so soon, right? And then so happened to that, and then a lot of my friends are outside work is actually in the crypto space, right? And they're very energetic. I mean, I still, if you remember, if some of you have got into crypto and all that, you may know someone called ANX, right? I still remember, and the founders, the 3 founders for the first Hong Kong crypto exchange, right? They first, 2014-ish, they first opened their store, which is just less than 100 square feet in Shanwen, the first crypto exchange in Hong Kong. I came to know them and all that, right? And they just say, they launched the exchange within 3 months and start making money and all that. Just say, I just say, wow, that's so quick, right? They are very detailed and very quick. They were all from very good backgrounds. Some of them, 2 of them are from HSBC, 1 of them is from a consultant, IT consultancy, right? And 3 of them become partners and launch that, and they're so good at executing things. So they all just say, Henry, right? So just join us, right? Join this entrepreneurship world, right? And don't just stay in an in-house, right? And this world is so much fun. And then the reality is that they have now become part of the Lisco now. You may know which one it is, and they have like 2 floors in Lee Garden, right? Which is like, and they starting off as that. So like, and then just for so I have a very humble start. Back in 2015, when I can just tell, I told Annie before that as well. When I started my own law firm, the reality, I started with 100 square feet room. Okay, just as simple as that. So when I started my law firm, I just 1 table, 1 desktop, and 1 pen, and that's how we started, right? As a law firm, as a lawyer, it doesn't take too much, right? I don't even have, need a lot.
Just need an iPhone.
Yeah, and a phone, and an iPhone, of course, and whatever. So that's how I start off. So I started by myself, and then I got a partner, and then start recruiting my first paralegal and all that, and build that up like over the 5 years. A lot of blessings, right, and ups and downs and all that. There's another, could be another day talk. But I think, so if you want to sell your own law firm, you have to forget about your in-house environment, right? Forget about your own office. I'm sure Kris has a really nice office in Standard Chartered building and all that. Or if you are in international office, you may be in IFC Exchange Square or whatever.
Seaview.
Yeah, and Seaview. And your own room, and your secretary, and your paralegals and trainees. Forget about all that. They belong to the firm, not you, right? So it's an illusion. So if you want to start a law firm, just so just start from scratch, right? Just you need a laptop and a good Microsoft, of course, and then a pen and a phone, and that's all about it. And then start building a business.
Fantastic, amazing story. Thank you, Henry. So we're just going to talk a bit about the in-house side. Kris, how did you manage to stand out when there are so many? There's quite a lot of in-house lawyers. I think over 1,000 in Hong Kong. How did you stand out and get promoted? What was the decision-making process behind staying in the same bank or moving to different banks?
I think it's very similar to going back to the basic. You have to invest in yourself. And so what Henry says, forget about all the external features, forget about, the library, the paralegals, the secretaries, the floors of working space that you have. Really spend the time to invest in yourself, and use that to hone your skills down. The way you can progress in any organization, again, is once you have done that, don't close the opportunities off. When you're in-house, there will be several opportunities that come knocking on your door. Whether in Henry's case, it's one law firm or another law firm, or it's a client, those opportunities will present yourself. So don't ever, and try and explore that. And that is your given right. Because you invested so much time in yourself, find out what you want to do as your next step. So whether it is to go on a startup, whether it is to go into one law firm or another law firm, you've invested so much time and energy in yourself that you will be given that opportunity. And whether it's in one organization like I've done with one particular bank, there will be opportunities within the bank. You might start off in one area, in one department, but because of the growth and the cycle of different departments, use that opportunity, talk to people, find out where it's going, what their revenues are the people and the work challenging to you? Do you want to get ahead in the game in that particular field? So like I said, you've got to be jack of all trades at the very beginning, and as you progress you will become master of one. So when you go in-house, there is not necessarily, you will just be that one person. And because you've invested time in yourself, you are the litigator, you are the employment counsel, you are the corporate counsel, you are the one that they'll come to with conveyancing needs, you are the one that they will come to for every multiple advice possible. So that will be your given right to develop your skill. And even though you're at one particular bank, in my case, for a number of years, you will definitely be given that opportunity to give advice, and just go with it. Yeah.
Okay, so basically rolling up your sleeves is very important. Right. Being flexible.
Very flexible.
Are there any other kind of personality traits for career progression can you think of?
Yeah. So it's one thing I want to supplement. Maybe yeah, I got that. No, one thing I want to supplement with for you. I shared that with my team. I want to share that today, right? So one thing I think I keep thinking about the same question, right? But maybe I just quantify it this way. So if I think a lot of you have learned this like in your high school and all that, the Newton law of motion. What's Newton law of motion? Is speed times time equal to distance, right? So if you believe that all your peers, right, they're all lawyers, right? They're all maybe from very good high school. If you look at international law, all of them are from like Harvard or Stanford, even Cambridge, Oxford, or from Beijing or that, right? They're all of like not if not equal, but very similar intelligence. Right? They're some of the most clever people in the world. So if the speed is the same, the only difference is the time. So if you spend more time, if you spend 1 hour more than your peers every single day, that will accumulate, right? That doesn't show in a day or week or month, right? But after a year, 5 years, 10 years, that will show a huge difference, right? I still remember Annie would tell you, right? I'm the one of the latest person to leave the law firm, like during my training day, right?
I can't remember.
Because you left earlier, right? But one thing I just say, if my senior at that time, I keep telling as a trainee, I say, if my senior cannot leave earlier than I do, that means I haven't served him or her very well, because he or she has to do a lot of hard work, and that's why he or she has to stay behind. So one thing, objective is to say, I must make sure my senior can leave earlier, or your junior must say, I must make sure the general counsel will leave earlier. That means I've done a good job. She can enjoy life. That's how I see it. You say. I mean, I still even today, I openly tell all the people I work 7 days a week. Yeah, you can find me in the office on Saturday, Sunday. Yeah. I mean, because I enjoyed it. I mean, yes. A lot of people talk about work-life balance. I actually talk about work-life integration. That's how it. So I don't say I can take a day off during the weekdays. I can take a day off on Sunday. So I don't actually. I only work from Monday to Friday, or I have to take a leave off on Sunday or whatever. So sometimes I take a leave off on during the weekday. Sometimes I take a leave off on all that.
And I think it's very important during this year in particular. We've all become very flexible, and we've all learned to multitask and do various things at the same time. Yeah. So we've all been a master of our own scheduling. Yeah. And you've got to be very organized in this environment.
Yeah. And I learned that from Donald Trump. Actually, if you look at his book, right? Actually, Donald Trump to say, if you want to be very successful people, forget about work-life balance. So, okay, and he talked about work-life integration. Whether you vote for him or not, that's another thing. But I think this advice from him, I think it's a really good advice indeed.
But I think so. One of the personality traits would be like you've got to be really passionate about what you do, and you really enjoy it. You don't really see it as work. Is that what?
Very good. Very good. I think it's a passion. The passion actually is a very big topic. I thought about this question a lot. I'm sure Kris has his own philosophy on this, but maybe I share with yours. A lot of people say work on what you're passionate about. That's what I believe in for my first, I think, before 30. And then after my 30s, and I start to say, so you do not necessarily work on what you're passionate about. Why do I say that? I read a book on this and as well. So I say, should I or shouldn't? The thing is, I mean, in real life, most of the people cannot work on what they're passionate about. That's the reality. that's a dream, but the dream come true doesn't happen a lot. So if you can find something you're passionate about, and then you say, and then you work on it full time, congratulations. But just like a lottery, doesn't happen all the time. 90%, 80%, 90% of people don't work on what they're passionate about. But that doesn't mean that you don't spend enough time on this. One thing I could really share with you, if you remember one of the, if you read, again, I think reading has really helped a lot. You may remember one of the Japanese very successful businessmen called, they call them the god of operations, right? He actually like started off, his story basically, he started off as when he was a trainee as an apprentice. He worked on a factory to produce China. So it's the flask and all that, right? But and then he's so passionate about it that it's a very the business line within the factory. But he's focused so much on it. He tried to make the best China and that, and then the business grows and all that, and then of course the senior management just noticed that, and then he was promoted to other areas and all that. What I'm trying to say is that a lot of the people just come, oh, I don't, to be honest, right? I don't think a lot of people are passionate about law, right? Most of them, I'm sure, may not be so passionate. You may be passionate about skiing, you may be passionate about football or basketball, whatever. I don't think a lot of people are passionate, but you don't have to be passionate about it, but just say that's your career. If you spend enough time on it and good at it, and you will start to enjoy it. I'm sure whether you have the same experience, I learned piano. I still remember when I was a grade 1 to grade 5. For my first 5 years, it was absolutely boring. Right? You have to practice scale, you have to practice pieces and all that. They're all boring. But then after you get after certain level, you can start playing some Mozart, still the Turkish march and all that, right? And start to play maybe Beethoven and all that. Then you start to enjoy it. So what I'm trying to say is don't. Because when you were a trainee, when you were the first few years PQD, you have to do a lot of research, a lot of the drafting, and then you're being criticized, and then you have to redo all over again, right? When you see the partner is socializing, right, at at Bankers Club, right, or whatever, or Four Seasons, right, and then I have to stay in the office doing hard work. Your day will come, but you have to build up your groundwork first. And then you will start to enjoy that, and then you will come to a time when, like these days, I think my life is very interesting. So like this morning, I've been discussing with a client about the new business model, how to use blockchain adopt into the business, and come up with a new, whether it's stable coin or STO or now decentralized finance, right? There's all very interesting stuff. But yeah, you will be discussing something different, I think, in your time. But that day will come. Yeah, I'm sure Kris said now she's now discussing, what's the new business model for virtual banks and all that, right? But you will not discuss this 10 years ago, right? Yeah, exactly.
That's amazing. It's really good to have hindsight. Obviously, you can see, how you built your career. Be patient. So I'm going to quickly move on to some more questions because we've only got 15 minutes left, I think, until questions. So for the audience, how did you roadmap or plan your career? Did you actually say to yourself, in 5 years, I'm going to set up my own law firm? And Kris, I'm going to be the head of legal? Never. It just happened.
I think what it is you stay in the game long enough, and before you know it, the years have gone by and you've trained and you've got that experience. And we don't look at ourselves and advertise ourselves as partners or senior managers. What we do is say, we're crypto lawyers or we are banking lawyers. That's what we are. We don't sell ourselves as I am a partner in the law firm. It's because, again, like Henry said, you just find your passion and you go with it. I am a banking lawyer and I absolutely thrive in it. I actually do get up in the morning thinking I really do enjoy what I do. So that's how we sell ourselves.
That's amazing. That's true passion for your job.
Annie just said that you don't need have the plan. I mean, when do I have to be a partner or in-house or as a general counsel, right? So, but you just have a grand plan. The grand plan could be just I want to be the best lawyer in this field in Hong Kong in a particular area and all that, right? You have a focus. So I think it's very important, right? When I talk about the Newton law of motion, one thing is that you need to know your goal. where's your where's your destination, right? You have a rough idea. I want to go to, let's say, Lantau Island, or whether you go to the peak, right? At least you just make sure your direction is correct. Then you just focus on that and put in the plus as well, and then you will start to figure out your own path. So for example, let's say, for example, one thing I would really encourage you guys, if you're at the mid-level, junior level, mid-level, you start talking to your partners, right? One thing you have to find out is what's the term for being an equity partner, right? So once you find out more, actually, some of them that may be appealing to some people, but that may not be so appealing to some of the other people, right? So if you know, if they tell you in your own law firm, that what is how you will be treated as an equity partner and all that, then you will think about, do you want to spend another 5 years to do this and to achieve that? And then if not, then you start thinking about, I want to switch your path, right? Maybe an in-house and all that. I didn't know, and Continent existed before 2010 anyway. So and then you start finding something more interesting.
So in terms of qualifications now, or educational certificates, would you recommend people, undertake accounting or other studies or certificates? Because I've seen if you're a data privacy or if you're a data privacy lawyer, for example, you might take a specific certificate. For you obtained an accounting qualification.
I would say accounting is very important. Whether you get the qualification or not is the other thing, or CFA is another thing. But I would say accounting, the minimal accounting knowledge is very important, particularly if you are in the non-contentious corporate commercial lawyers, because one thing is that law is very boring for most people. So if you're being in-house particularly, right, your senior management or your front office bankers and all that, they don't want to talk to you about law. They just say, the law, you deal with it. That's the reason why you're here. I don't want to deal with law. But what I want to talk about is that what's the financial impact? If that happened, what's the financial impact? And then they will talk about all the top line, bottom line, and the P ratios, all that, right? And some of the calculation on the accounting wise, right? And today we just talk about, short-term borrowing, long-term borrowing, what's the impact from their eyes? What's the difference, right? You need to have some basic concept. You don't need to be an expert, because you will never be, because you are a lawyer. But just that if you have some good knowledge and grasp the basic idea and all that, then you can talk. You will think, you are on the same page. You are the same mindset.
Thank you, Henry. So turning on to languages, how essential are Chinese languages nowadays, do you think, for job searchers as seekers in Hong Kong?
I think in Hong Kong it's very important, especially with your reading skills. Definitely spend a lot of time with your, like I said, reading and drafting skills are very important, especially where we are geographically in Hong Kong. You've got to have these definitely in your back pocket.
And that's for both in-house and private practice.
I would say both. Just particularly in most of the but particularly if you're from Hong Kong or China, of course you will need to learn both, because people expect you, like whether you're in a Western bank or Chinese bank and all that, they expect you to know both, right? It will have to communicate with you. If you just know one language, it take a long time in translation. But one thing I want to encourage you guys is not just learn the language, learn the culture. What you agree with or not is another thing. You don't have to agree with it, but learn about the culture. Particularly if you're in Hong Kong, learn about the Chinese culture. Read a little bit of the history book and all that, and mingle more with the sort of the Chinese mainland clients or friends and all that, right?
Networking.
There's a little bit more networking. I can tell you one of the reasons why I joined Thresholds at that time, because I say, I met with Teresa Cole and my boss at that time, and they say one thing, because I joined them because they mainly serve the mainland client, and I want to know them more. The best thing is that I spend 8 hours a day on the telephone conference with my mainland clients, so I get to know their culture, because how they speak and what they think and all that. And I joined a Chinese bank, and then I taught all the senior management basically are mainland Chinese. Of course, some are from the Western as well, but from different banks. So the good thing about it is that I have a day-to-day contact with them. So you can know that culture, the way they speak. So one thing about the Chinese culture is that they're not so upfront. They are a little bit more, normally they would have a lot of messages behind what they say. That's one thing I learned. But you cannot grab those ideas. What are they trying to tell you? Unless you spend enough time with them and learn that sort of culture. That's very important. Particularly, you won't go to the a senior, you want to join the senior management in a Chinese firms and all that, you need to know what that time is. So otherwise you'll miss the message and all that, and then that will have an impact on career.
So again, it's investing time in,
Yes.
in knowing your contacts and experience. Thank you so much. So I think the final question before we move on to questions and answers is, you've both reached the top of your legal career. What's next?
Okay, so Annie, I don't think I've reached the top of my career. I think continuing doing and developing myself is really important. Sitting here with you and Henry is part of what I consider developing myself as well. So don't ever think and limit yourself in a particular what you're doing at any point in time. Always think of what's next to develop your legal skills. So whether it's a different legal organization, whether it's a different institution, whether it's a different corporate, whether it's a different geography, whether it's a different country, a different regulator, there are multiple different areas you can go to develop yourself personally. So I actually think that I'm not at the top of my career yet. I think doing stuff like this is fantastic.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Kris.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think it's just only the start of my career. I mean, I still think there are a lot of things to do. One thing I really want to share with you is that part of the reason why I start my own law firm instead of joining other platforms and all that, particularly in the last few years, a lot of the other law firms have asked me to join them, but I just say not the right time yet or not the right moment. But part of the reason is that I always compare, exactly speaking, is that we compare our legal industry and the taxi industry. Why would I say that is I keep asking some of the candidates and all that, do you know how much a taxi driver, the taxi driver, always really respect them. And the thing is they work very hard, they work 12 hours a day, every single day, basically. And then how much they make, I bigger than younger generations have. Do you know how much they make before 97? They make at least 30 to 40K per month. And now they say, do you know how much a taxi driver make before the COVID? 20 to 25K. Do you know how much a taxi driver make today after COVID? Just only 15 to 18K. But they work as hard, but they're just making less. I mean, Andy would tell you, right? The pay and the salary, if you know the trend for the trainees and the NQs, had that fluctuated a lot, I think you will have a better picture and all that. But what I want to say is that for the taxi industry, they have now got new thing called Uber. Now they have something called Tesla. But I think for the legal industry, we have not a major innovations yet, right? We're still in the primitive sort of business model. So I think the thing is, you have to think, I think in a wider perspective, and we do, the reason why I say law firm, because if you join our existing platform and all that, but other than L&Y, right, of course, then you're restrained by the firm directive. You have to think about, is your firm going in the right direction? Would that be, is it an Uber or taxi or the future Tesla? You have to think about that sort of question. So I don't want to be, so I want to stay in the game. So that's why we have to keep evolving. So that's the reason why, first of all, we want to do different. That's why we invest time and money on blockchain and all that practice. And then we focus on Greater Bay Area. And then, but that's just one thing. We will keep evolving to stay on top of the game. And that's what I think is really the beginning of our journey. And
yeah, that's amazing. Yeah, I think I totally agree. There's so many more years to come.
Yes, exactly.
And great potential. So before we move on to questions and answers, we've just got one final poll. Kieran is going to share some question. Okay, so what does the poll say? It's in tiny writing. Where do you see yourself in 5 years' time? If you could just please click and we can share some results. Oh, wow, 50-50. 50% is going to, oh, someone not sure. It's still moving. Okay, so there's quite a bit of uncertainty. 44% are not sure of where they're going to be in 5 years' time. That's
you
probably...
haven't got set up a law firm.
Yes, we need to add one more, setting up a law firm. So nobody's moving out of the law, which is a good sign. And many people are going in-house, it seems, 40%, and 20% will pursue law firm partnership, including setting up your own firm, I suppose. Thank you so much for taking part in that poll. And thank you both for your inspiring.
Maybe I just one thing to add on,
yes,
on this, moving out of the law, that's very interesting. The one thing I could comment on, because after this 20 years, I have seen some people did actually try to move out of the law.
Me.
Move out.
I moved out of the law.
Yeah, exactly. And it's a very successful, you see.
Really.
Yeah, I'm still engaged to the law.
Yeah, but one thing is that you have to really think hard. I have seen people try to be entrepreneur and to say, oh, after they become the sort of, and then move out of law, try to be, some of them they try to be coder, try to set up the business and all that. But the one thing is that it's not as easy, and the battlefield out there is a lot more fierce than you think. Than in a legal industry. The one thing I say that is because in a legal industry, you are just competing with people, even though they are the higher intelligence, but they are also they have spent time in, of course, in some of the top law schools and all that, and they have something called integrity. But when you compete, and they have licenses and all that, so they're quite bound and restrained by these sort of rules and regulation imposed by the Hong Kong Law Society and all that, professional code of conduct. But in the outside world, in the real business world, the battlefield and the competition is a lot more fierce. They will do whatever to compete and to win the game. And that's just totally different. You have to be prepared.
So I got one point to add to what Henry just said, is that if you're starting your legal career now, one of the things that gives Henry and I the biggest fear is that when we go into a business meeting and we find out that our client or somebody on the other side of the table has a law degree, that gives us another edge that we sit on, because we know that that person has got the skills that we each have and has further developed it into a business skill. And so we know that we've really got to be just as sharp. So what I'm trying to say is that even though you have a legal background, going into another career is always a good thing to do, because you rely on what you have gained in the legal profession.
Yeah, that's very true.
Well, just that you have to forget about your legal thing. And just be humble. The people competing with you out there may not have the legal degree. They may just come up they may have just not from a top law school or top university, or they may just be, I know a lot of billionaires out there, but they haven't even finished their tertiary, right?
But they're very knowledgeable.
They're very knowledgeable and all that. That's the one thing you have to bear in mind. That you have to stay very humble.
You also have to learn from them. For example, when we go into meetings now with people who have technical skills that we need to launch, a particular blockchain product, we have to listen and really let them take the lead on that for certain things.
Amazing. Exactly. Thank you so much for that sharing. I think before we move on to the key takeaways, we have a question and answers. We've got, let's see how much time we have. Yes, we've got a few minutes, 10 minutes for that. If anybody's got any questions, could you please raise your hand or type it into the chat box, or you can put your speaker on microphone and you can ask the question. Chat box. Are there questions in there? Okay, so the first question, thank you so much for the question, is how can you switch to other fields of law if you are originally not trained in this area? So at the beginning, I think, Henry, you already explained about the switch from practice areas. Are there any other additional final tips we can give?
Just, I would say, just if you prepare to switch, you have to show maybe your existing boss or your new employer and all that to say, I want to switch. You are prepared to do whatever to switch. I think that's a determination, because switching is not easy. I went through all this, and then my first couple of years is basically nightmare. Because that, let's say, particularly if you switch from litigation to corporate or corporate to litigation, that totally complete mindset. So it's totally different, and basically the mindset is so different. I even use an analogy to say, just like if you're a litigator, you say, does the monkeys eating banana? For the corporate, just like the monkeys eating apple. But I can explain you more if you meet, like maybe later, you would take another 5 minutes. But just that's so different. So that you have to so that if you anyone, even my some of the members of the law firm just like come speak to me, is that you will two things, right? You have to show the determination. Even if you say, if you tell your boss, I'm willing to take a pay cut just to switch, that shows the determinations, right? Because I just say, I want to follow you, Kris. I want to be able to learn about virtual banking. So just forget about, you don't have to give me the, I mean, in the real life, I can tell you some real example is that a lot of the bankers, they switch to crypto. So they join some of the biggest exchanges and all that with no pay or less pay. They're willing to take that switch and to switch from the traditional banking to crypto. And they all become very successful and after, but they pay the price. You have to be willing to pay the price for the switch.
But I also would add, we discussed this before about networking. Networking is very important. Please do it throughout your career, however early or late in your career, because it helps with your job search, job switch, practice area switch.
One thing about talk about networking and all that, Kris can add on as well, is that we have a good discussion on what about networking. Yes, I would say you should sort of socialize network, but don't overdo it. For example, one thing I think which is even more important than networking is about your reputation. Actually, you don't feel this at this time, particularly when you're in your first 10 years of practice. Actually, what you're doing right now is that you are building up your own reputations, and that will reflect yourself, and you will start to feel that after, particularly I think after 10, 15 years, you will start to feel that, particularly when I come and set up my own law firm, I start to feel that had an impact on myself. What I did in the past 15 years and then have impact. What I try to say is that, if you think about this way, if you have a reputation of going to Lan Kwai Forum every Friday, Saturday, Sunday, or even every day, right? Even though you may be quite good lawyers, right? Would your clients be willing, or your friends today, peers today, who join in-house in 15 years down the line, 20 years down the line, be willing to give you the case? So in a real life example is that I may not speak to some of my friends or in my law school, they just, maybe when I'm partying, they're studying law school and all that. But when I have a real case, I will give to the friends who may not socialize network with me in Lan Kwai Forum, who just like maybe in the law library. These are the people who I will be prepared or more willing to give the case to them. Reason why is that I know that just because they have started reputation, they're so interested in law, they spend every day and night in the law school, in the law library, and so that if I pass the case to them, I know that instead of they're drinking in Lan Kwai Forum or in the evening, they're actually spending time on my case. So to start thinking about that, you are building a reputation on every minute, every day, not just I'm networking, I start to know people. Your reputation is very important.
That's very true. Thank you. And we've got another question. Thank you for that question. This one is, given the importance of the Chinese languages in this jurisdiction, would you discourage young people without that skill set from pursuing a legal career here? Interesting question. What would you say?
So if I look at the organization I work in, and I were to look across the floor, I wouldn't say it is just of one particular type. I would say we have a pretty diverse culture on a single floor where I work. So I would not discourage you from pursuing a legal career. There is a place, an opportunity for everyone out there. We have multiple languages skills in our legal department, and it's harder for sure. The opportunities are perhaps fewer than the majority of vacant positions at any given point in time, but at no point should you be discouraged. There is a place and an opportunity to use your language skills in any large organization.
That's very encouraging. Thank you, Kris.
But one thing I add on this, I mean, actually, I will not discourage you to pursue this, but you have to think about from your employer's or boss perspective, right? If you say, if you are the same lawyer, one know the Chinese language, who doesn't know the Chinese language, who will you employ? Of course, you will say, I may employ the same lawyer, but just that one no more, Chinese market and all that. Definitely. But, and then not even with Chinese market, and then you will say, but one lawyer who's a better lawyer, who has a special skill set, who may not know the Chinese language, but they have special skills. For example, Kris, right? I'm not sure whether you know Chinese or not, but she's so good and so special knowledge in virtual banking, right? That compensate the language skills and all that. That's important, right? Even my law firm, now we have like 30 people and all that. and having yeah. So we actually have like and had some lawyers who did not speak the Chinese skill set, but he was so good at let's say blockchain cryptocurrency, because that would compensate, because even our client would say, oh, I want to speak to this guy because he's so good and that and so knowledgeable about the blockchain practice. So that compensates his Chinese skill set. So you have to think about, if you do not have this, what will you compensate for that?
But I would also believe that the person who asked this question, it could be that you could start learning. It's never too late. Presumably you're early on in your career.
One thing I would say, you may learn a bit, but don't, if you, I'm not sure what sort of like age you are, but I believe that will be on your law school. One thing, I think the reality, you can never be as good as a Chinese who start learning this.
But it is breaks down cultural barriers, I would say, if they can speak.
Yes, I have known some people who are able to do that, but again, a lot of blessings, right? A lot. I know some, of course, like who start, some foreigners are lawyers, right? To start like reading Chinese and all that at their 20, and they can speak fluent, beautiful Mandarin, right? But they spend a long time in Beijing, in China, and all that. But you must be prepared for this before you go down that route, and then you will shine, because I can tell you, the Chinese clients were so amazed and impressed. If, let's say, a foreign lawyer can speak their language, that's even better than a Hong Kong lawyer can speak the Chinese. They expect that. It's like all Hong Kong lawyers can speak the foreign language. But if there's a, let's say, a foreign lawyer can speak the Chinese language, they will pay extra for this, I can tell you.
Thank you. Have we got any more questions, please? Thank you for that question. If not, we will move on to the key takeaways. It's just basically summarizing today's talk. So let's just come out of that chat box. So I'm just going to quickly read it. So firstly, have a grand plan for your own career. Don't follow the crowd. I think Henry talked about that.
One thing I was to say, a lot of the candidates, even these days when we go on the interview and all that, they can say, what sort of area of law do you want to practice in? They just say, IPO lawyer. I say, why do you want an IPO lawyer? They say, no, because I think the reality is, because IPO lawyers, I mean, the salaries and all that pay more than all the other practices. But think about, your legal career is not just only 1 year, 2 years. It's about 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, right? It's about the supply and demand. Before 97, a lot of convincing lawyers, and they pay really well. They make good, quick money. Look at me now. None of you, I think, want to be a convincing lawyer. It's same. It's about supply and demand. So if you have so many IPO lawyers out there, unless you will say, I'm the best of all these IPO lawyers, and you're so passionate about it, that could be right. But just say, don't just don't just follow the crowd. A lot of the people say, oh, your peers say, I want to be an IPO lawyer, and then you want to be an IPO lawyer. Think about what suits you best. You may want, one of the candidates today I met to say, I want to be an IP lawyer, or I want to be a litigator, I want to do real estate, I want to be a fund formation. There are a lot of other practices, but I would say, whenever a candidate tell me I want to be an IPO lawyer, I would say, think twice about it. That's
Thank you. So having a 5-year plan is also good, but because of things, unforeseen challenges, just like now with COVID, it's probably best to make some short-term goals as well, and to really celebrate those successes when you reach those goals. And then, Henry, you might want to explain this one: work or don't work in an area that you are passionate about.
Yeah, I think I sort of, if you are lucky enough, if law is what you're passionate about, good. I mean, so if you're so passionate, I tell my clients and even my team members know that, right? I spend, when I say I spend half day over the weekend, because I have families and children and all that, I always spend the morning back in the office, to do some reading, because as I say, during the weekdays and all that, I have to complete interviews and or the business or to do some work. I think the weekend, let's say, I would spend normally, I would say the Saturday morning and Sunday morning to back in the office. Is so quiet because most of the people will not be there, and then start to do some reading on some research on the latest news or on catch up on the legal work. I mean, and then that's the thing. But even if you say, oh, law is not you're passionate about, that's fine as well. Don't just screw on this. Just because that's your career, just be good at that. That's of it, and respect it, and then that will pay off. Your hobby may be playing golf, maybe doing like skiing, or maybe doing scuba diving. That's okay as well, but that's a hobby. and then that's complementary.
I agree.
Fantastic. And the next one would be mentors.
Yeah.
As we explained, it's always good to have different mentors at different levels. You can even get reverse mentoring if necessary.
On this point, one thing I add, sorry, I'll try to give as much as possible to you guys.
Please.
What I learned the past 4 years, I know the time is short. The thing is, for mentors, try to find a mentor who is roughly, I would say, 5 to 10 years older than you do. And that's the thing. Well, if you can, of course, speak to some, I do speak to somebody even older than 20 or 30 years. But one thing is, what worked for them may not necessarily work for you, because the age gap is so much different. So they say, oh, I make so much money in convincing and all that, right? It's all good money. That's all gone. But I'm not saying there are a lot of opportunities out there, but just different opportunities. Yes. But just that if you're talking, I would say 5 to 10 years, that will be really good. Is that, oh, they can tell you what may happen, that good gets of, and they're in the same generations, and they will tell you, give you the right sort of advice.
So the mentors are everywhere, you know, it could be in your company, in your external lawyers or internal.
And any
friends, colleagues.
I'm
one. Yes, thank you. And socializing is essential, but don't over network. As Henry mentioned, we don't want to be known for drinking out in Lan Kwai Fong every night. And then be open to diversifying and having breadth of experience. Contribute your skills through volunteering. This is very, very important because one, obviously, you're giving back to community through utilizing your pro bono skills, whether it be, you know, for the legal field or anything. You could help with fundraising or marketing. But it's also supplements your networking because you will meet so many different people through the process. And then be patient in building your career. It's a lifelong and continuous process. Even though Henry and Kris have reached very heady heights of their careers, they still haven't finished. So there's still a long way to go. It's a continuous learning journey.
One thing on this point, right? I'm not sure whether you find the same, but now these days when I find the CVs, all that, you start feeling people just keep jumping. Yeah, I think there's a thing about this thing. I think the thing I'll share with you is that there's a price for switching a firm. Not just, okay, you see a salary pay rise, okay, for one firm to another firm. But the other thing is that you create another role in your CV. Yeah. What does it mean? Just that, oh, if you look at this, okay, maybe we'll switch from the first firm to the second firm, maybe that's explanatory. But, and then if you keep seeing these people keep switching from 5, I've seen like a lot of those CVs, right? Switch 5 firms in 5 years, 6 years, right? Then they start questioning, right? What happened?
Not only do they question, they don't even choose them to interview.
I mean, that's something, unless there's a really good reason. If you switch from one firm to the other, okay, or this firm doesn't suit me, that partner may not be very nice to me and all that, right? The culture, but if you're switching like 5 firms, like some sort of like, if you show it to be jumpy, that have a cost. And then you will later on when you get to the 5-6 year PQE and you have changed by 5, 6, 7 firms, right? I don't think Kris will have a hard time when you come to, even if you interview this candidate, you will have a hard time to question about what happened to you.
But I think that person can save themselves by spending the next 5 years in one job.
But how can you guarantee, Kris? That's the other thing, right?
You have to sell, I
would stay whatever for 5 years. That's hard. I mean,
But always remember, there are other people competing for that position as well. So what makes your CV stand out? What gives you the strength that another candidate cannot bring to the table? Is it a language skill? Is it an expertise which gives you an edge? What is your edge?
Yeah, exactly. And then if you see a CV which stay in a law firm for, I would say 5, 7 years, it's actually a plus that you do not actually recognize maybe today. But when, as an employee, when you look at CV, you say, oh, that's a real loyalty. That's loyalty actually pay off. But now, of course, come to a different stage of life, then you may have to switch it. That's all understandable. And I think Kris, this guy is
fantastic. And these couple of points,
but I was not good for any, right? Oh, this guy hasn't changed job for 7 years. Right?
No, I encourage them to stay, please. This is sort of off the point, but it helps your case. If you're looking for a job or you're considering a career switch, it can be quite stressful, and you have to keep your energy levels up and stay positive and stay connected, and obviously finally enjoy the process. Thank you so much.
Enjoy life.